All right. Good morning, Sana. How are you doing?
Well, Rajiv, very well. Thank you. How are you?
So far, so good. Lovely to have you on Leaders in Library Season 2.
Thank you for having me here. It's really a pleasure and an honor.
Absolutely. Same here. And I vividly remember how we got connected when you were in 2020 making an attempt to make the first video post on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And you did the one first with a little bit of apprehension. Then you tried and kept on becoming better at it. And I loved the subsequent ones. And I complimented you for that lovely post once you made, after which we got connected. So I vividly remember how we got connected there.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And thank you so much for supporting my videos and encouraging my journey. I have a long way to go, but I'm on the path.
Absolutely. Same here. Similarly, thank you for encouraging and me as well and being part of this event. We have amazing leaders from the world of business, HR, OD coming and talking about books. So it's lovely to have somebody like you in the world of coaching with so many years of experience on your shoulders to join the force. So before we get started and talk on the very powerful book that you have chosen, I'm very happy to talk about this book today. Let me have the honor of introducing you to the audience. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are going to be when you listen to Sana. Welcome to Leaders in Library Season 2. All of you were part of Season 1, where we had 33 global leaders come and talk about 22 powerful books. Season 2, we have 40 leaders coming and talking on 40 exclusive books, which is massive and very exciting for a person like me who runs a book-based leadership consulting house. And I'm also a Maverick book lover. So it's very exciting to have so many leaders. And what is interesting is there are people from multiple spaces, HR, OD, coaching, finance, C-level, multiple spaces, which is very diverse audience, makes it very inclusive as well to make this event all the more better than the season 1, right? And today we have yet another guest, Sana Singh Tomar, fondly called Sana. You would have seen her definitely on LinkedIn. She's regularly there with her post and a lot of snippets that she keeps giving on helping people to become the version 2 of themselves. A very powerful post. She is an ICF certified, professional certified coach, executive performance coach is what she calls herself. She's part of an organization called Thrive for You. And she's also part of Maynard Lay Associates, which is one of the global consulting houses that does phenomenal work. And I have associated with them many years back. So that's a great space to be in. Comes with 20 plus years of experience in the space of, I don't want to call it coaching, I'll just say helping people to become the better version of themselves. I think that's a very gratifying profession to be in. I so appreciate that because I'm also belonging to that fraternity. Uh, she operates out of Singapore. Beyond all this that I used to introduce her to you, why I'm so happy and you see a smile on my face is because she's also a book lover like me. And what else do I need to have her on this event? So welcome on board, Sana. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Rajiv. And I'm really happy to partner with you today.
Lovely, super. So let's get started. Before we get on to a couple of thoughts about this book, let me have the first question to you. So tell us, how did the association with books start? As a girl, as a teenager, as a college-going girl, how early was it?
Okay. So I think my association with books started fairly early,
Uh-huh.
even though I was not a reader. My mother was a voracious reader. And, she was very keen that I take to reading as a habit. But
Mm-hmm.
I think for the first few years of my life, I completely avoided going into the world of books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and later on, when I went to boarding school, I had another friend who was another reader, and she would read all the time while
Mm-hmm.
eating. If she could sneak in 10 minutes anywhere, she'd be reading. So it used to fascinate me as to how a book can engage someone so deeply.
Mm.
And later on, when I started reading a little by
Mm.
little,
Mm.
it hooked me. And I think I picked up reading as a young adult, and I've continued to do so for the past many years now.
Lovely. So how old were you when you started this?
I think I would have been around 17. 17, 18. So a young
Very,
adult.
very, very nice.
I'm
Lovely,
not
lovely.
so much a childhood reader.
Are you by any chance in touch with that friend of yours who read a
Yes,
lot
yes,
and inspired
yes.
you?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I
Oh,
am.
imagine the size of the library that lady must be having today. She must have read multiple books.
Yes.
Yeah, lovely. So nice, isn't it? Such friends make such an impact in your life, right? They don't even
Yeah.
tell it, but they have created something and made what you are today, right? We're always grateful to such people. Lovely,
Yeah.
lovely. Wherever she is, my blessings to her. God bless her with more reading, and more reading. Superb. So as you started off with that, and how did it happen? Did it start with your books with Nancy Drews and Famous Five kind of books, or did you straight away move on to Jeffrey Archer's and Robert Ludlum of the world?
So I did try Nancy Drew. I did, but I think the first book that really caught my attention was the Jeffrey Archer book, and I'm
Ah,
glad you mentioned that. It was a book of short stories, and I started with short stories because I realized that a short story was enough to catch my attention, and
absolutely.
I couldn't read a lot. So one story at a time just did it for me. So I started with short stories and then read larger books. And there from fiction, I moved into non-fiction. So that's been my journey of books. Um,
Fantastic.
and I'm so glad we're talking about books today, because today in India, it's Basant Panchami, right? And it's a day we worship Goddess Saraswati
Saraswati.
and the goddess of knowledge and books and creativity. So I think it's a wonderful day that we're doing this.
Absolutely. How providential and so nice. So tell me, as you moved on from Jeffrey Archer's and Robert Ludlum's and went on to read management books, leadership books, it would have made you reflect. How did these books help you in your own journey of leadership and then eventually a coach?
So I think it was very, very conscious, Rajiv. My
Mm.
journey into books, into reading, it came from a space where I found intelligence in people attractive,
Mm-hmm.
and it inspired me.
Beautiful.
And I realized that if I had to develop my own intelligence over a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
books would be one of the best resources. So I
Beautiful.
firmly believe knowledge is power,
Mm.
right? And having followed a lot of successful leaders, I realized that I would almost say 97 to 98% of them
Mm.
are readers,
Absolutely. I completely
and
agree.
they do get their inspirations, their ideas, a lot of their knowledge that they put
From
out there
books.
from books. So I think it's such a powerful resource.
Yeah.
It helps you think better. It widens your point of view.
Correct.
You understand the world in a much, much larger space. So
Mm.
I think it's just wonderful. They also say experience is the best teacher,
Mm.
right? And of course, what you get as experience as an individual yourself is right. But a book has the experience of another individual and sometimes
Absolutely.
years of experience compiled in a 4 or 5 hour journey.
Correct. Correct.
What can be better than that, So
Absolutely.
that fascinates me about books. And I say that if you can learn from the experience of someone else and add that to your own experience, you can become richer faster.
Oh yeah, it saves you of all the research that the person did for you. You just have to read those pages. It's so easy.
Right, right.
Yeah. In fact, one of the guests, when I was talking with him in season one, I asked him, so what do books do to you? And honestly, till then, if somebody asked me the question, I would have 3, 4 sentences to talk about. He just made one sentence, which all of us know. But it made me think. He said, leave all the definitions aside, Raji. For me, books makes the individual more aware. Full stop.
Yeah,
I said, I think it's actually a full stop. There is no comma or a dot to it.
absolutely.
Yeah, because the word awareness is so mighty that it can engulf everything into it.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I'm richer today because of books.
absolutely. Super. Lovely, lovely. So, with all that reading and all that books that you have read, what made you pick the book for the day, Atomic Habits by James Clear? What a powerful book. Why this of all?
So, this is a book that stays around me. I read it and then I reread it and I read parts of it. Of course, habits is such a critical part of a human being. Yeah.
Hmm.
human beings are called creatures of habit.
Correct.
And we all have different patterns, different behaviors in which we kind of behave similarly over a period of time. And like they say, you know, your thoughts become your words become your action becomes your habit.
Yeah.
Your habits build or create your character. And your character actually defines what life really is.
Right.
So habits is right in the middle of this entire chain, right?
Correct, correct.
And if you can get your habits right, means you can get your character right. And that is so essential for success. So I use it as an L&D professional who's been doing learning and development work for so many years, as a coach that works with people for their transformation. Everybody is basically trying to either add a habit to their bucket or remove a habit from their bucket.
Correct.
To a certain place.
True, true, true.
And what James Clear has really done in his book is he's just simplified habits and made them very simple and very doable. And that's why, as a person who believes that, you know, behavior can be changed, it can be shaped, habits can be created, bad habits can be gotten rid of.
Correct.
This is a wonderful book to support all of that.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And what I liked in what you said is the habit sits in that spot where the next is character, right? And that is so profound and it takes time and everybody wants to create their version of the character.
Right.
And so right. You know, that's beautifully put in. And I'm just thinking that in that continuum, it seems to be the right place where habit is sitting.
Yeah. Right in the center.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Lovely. So let's touch upon a couple of things that James is talking about in this book, right? We can't do justice to the book in 45 minutes, but I picked up a couple. So he starts off by saying small habits make a huge difference, right? And he says that it's a very step-by-step process and it's a multiplier effect that has. How do you see it as a coach, Sana? Tell us wearing the hat of a coach, because you help people take those baby steps to become the better version, right? Why do you agree with this?
So I agree with this is because, you know, whenever we look at changing something, it looks like a very big thing to do. You know, any habit you want to change, anything that you want to crack, it looks very huge. But I think what I always want to tell my clients that I partner with is that, of course, have the bigger picture in view, but let's right now only look at the first small baby step. And what does that look like?
Right.
And do you feel comfortable doing that? And once you've achieved that, then we look at the next.
Correct.
So I think any behavior change starts with that small first baby step of the entire length and breadth of what you need to change. And this is exactly what James Clear is saying, is that habits, as big as they seem, they start at a small atomic level. And that makes a lot of difference.
Right, right.
And that is where I agree with the author completely.
Beautiful. So tell me, with your experience of having worked with so many coaches over the time, do people find it difficult to take the next steps in the journey, or do they find the first step difficult?
It's usually the first step. It's usually the first step. And any change needs two things. It needs patience and it needs consistency.
True, true.
Right? Any pattern that you've had for a couple of years and it's been there with you, say, for 15 years, 20 years, don't think that 3 months will just,
absolutely,
you know, create, because you're actually not replacing a neural pathway, but you're developing another parallel, stronger pathway.
Correct.
So in the process of developing that pathway, you have to just consistently stay at it till the new habit or the new pathway is much stronger than the old one. And that kind of tells us what is the kind of work that is required. And that requires patience. Right. And while you're being patient means you have to be okay with failure. Beautiful. But you have to still get up and keep doing what needs to be done. So you don't give up.
Lovely. So tell me, this is a very interesting conversation. Before I go to the next one, a little more on this powerful point that you said. You spoke about the new neural pathway, right? So when I'm on my journey to start a new habit, right? Uh, by default, there is a need to leave a habit, right? That's a corollary of it. When do I know that the new neural path has probably got established? Is it when that I'm now comfortable on the new habit? It means that the new path has got created in my head. Is that when do I
Okay.
understand that?
Yeah. So, usually they say if you do something for 21 days,
Hmm.
it's a new habit. Or some people say if you do something for 60 days, it becomes a new habit.
होता है क्या?
Pers- Personally, I've tried something even for 100 days
Hmm.
and then gone back to a previous pathway, right? So I don't think it's a matter of time at all, number one.
Hmm.
Number two is, when does it become like second skin to you? So as a baby, right, when we're learning to walk, we start from crawling. And then the first step is to stand up and, it's called cruising. So we hold certain things and we try
Yeah.
to walk. And then we fall down.
Hmm.
But we do that several times.
True.
And every time we do it, we get hurt,
Hmm.
right? But no baby says, I'm not doing this anymore. Ho gaya.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like it hurts too much. So I'm not going to try to walk. We are meant or built to try things again and again.
Lovely.
Right?
Hmm.
So one day we go from that conscious competence where we are really consciously trying to walk
Hmm.
to today where it is unconscious competence,
Hmm.
right? We don't think twice before we have to step up and walk somewhere.
Correct. Correct.
Till we reach a stage later on in our life when maybe some part of our system doesn't start working too well or stops functioning the way it is. And then we again need to get conscious about the way we walk in
Yeah.
our old age.
True. True. True.
So we're built to do this. From going to a level where we are not competent at something to paying a lot of attention to it, at becoming competent, and then becoming unconsciously competent.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Just like driving a car as well.
Yes. Yes. I think a very powerful message you're giving to the young leaders here, Sana, is that change to a new habit is not a function of time. It is more a function of consistency and patience that you spoke about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. I think I'm going to take that as a learning from you. That's a very powerful one. So, as the author moves in the book, he talks about a shift from goals, right? And he says, in the mind as individuals, they should move from this into something called focusing on systems instead.
Yeah.
How do you interpret this? Because all of us work towards a goal. That change of a new habit, old habit, and a want of a new habit is a goal. But what does he mean when he says focus on systems? Explain that a little easier for us.
Yeah. So imagine, a lot of people have the goal that I want to lose weight, right? And that becomes your larger goal. And what you would do is, the weighing scale becomes your measurement.
Absolutely.
And every day you will go and stand on it and either feel happy or feel sad. And, that is something that most of us relate.
True.
But what the author is really trying to tell us is it's good to have goals. And it's important to have goals, but what's more important than the goals is the systems and processes that you've put into place to achieve that goal.
Okay.
So just having the intention is not important. How have you figured out your system to get there?
Okay.
And having a solid, robust system in place to get there. So imagine one of the things that you definitely need to do when you're trying to lose weight is actually walk into your pantry and get rid of everything that doesn't serve your weight loss process, right?
Okay.
So all those snacks, all those desserts, all the chocolates, those need to exit, right? And when you go shopping, they don't need to come back into the house. Now that is one part of the system. Another part of the system could be you announce it. You announce it publicly. You go on Facebook and you say that I am going to lose.
That's a very intimidating thing. I've committed myself. I have to live by
but
it.
for some people, it works. Because now that I've announced it to the world, shit, I can't go back on that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Number 3 is you can get an accountability partner. You can, hatch up with a friend, a coach, anybody, and says that, can you help me, support me? This is something I intend doing.
Correct.
Will you hold me accountable?
Yeah, we go to the gym together, you keep count of my
Absolutely.
exercises and all that.
Yeah. So that's putting a system in place. A simple system is if I want to work out every day in the morning, then I keep my alarm not on the snooze mode and I place it a little far away from my bed.
I have to get up.
Yeah, that's the system.
Yeah.
So just the intention that I want to wake up in the morning to exercise doesn't work. What's the system behind that intention? The system is I've set my alarm, it's not on snooze, and it is away from my reach. So it will keep ringing till I physically get out of bed and get there. Second part of the system is that I don't have to look for my workout clothes and shoes. It's lying there. It's set the night before.
Okay, that's a good one.
So that's a system, right? And hence, depending on whatever you're trying to do, you put these systems and checks and balances into place. And that makes creating a habit easier and faster than just having the goal or intention of saying, I want to lose weight.
I agree, because if you stick to those systems, I think slippage would not happen, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You're right. Actually, because I'm just thinking, this. So I'm a 5 a.m. club person. So I woke up at 5 a.m. today. Even today, it was a push. No, I don't want to get up. It's 10 minutes ho jate thoda. 5 minutes ho jate.
Absolutely.
Then 5-10. Then it came and hit me that the author of the books, Robin, says that there are 95% of people who are not getting at 5 a.m. There are 5% who are doing it. Do you want to be the 95 or the 5? So that tongue came and hit my head. I said, no, bhago, I will jump. So that's the system, right?
Whatever works for you, just recalling that statement in your head is a system you've put into place. Absolutely. That pushes you and you say, okay, no, I need to get out of bed. So whatever works for you as an individual.
Yeah. It's very akin to the organization definition that we say that processes are so important to achieve a result, right? This is nothing but a process that he's talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Lovely. That takes me to the next one, right? So as you start focusing on systems and create a process and stay disciplined to that, and I think your start that you said of being consistent is a very powerful word that comes to here, because focusing on system is meaning staying consistent on the system that you're defining, isn't it?
Yeah, now, absolutely.
Yes. Now he also says an outcome, right, based on identity-based habits really helps us. What is this identity-based habits?
I think it's one of the most powerful messages in this book, right? It's literally like this. So the outcome is here. What you want to achieve is here. Below the outcome is the systems and the processes.
Correct.
And below the systems and processes is the most important thing, is your identity.
Okay.
Yeah. So when this changes, then these two can change.
Give me an example.
So I'll tell you, I just told you, as a child, I was not a reader.
Okay.
I didn't identify being a book lover. I thought book was something that was not meant for me. So as an identity, I was not a reader. One day in my growing up years, maybe possibly when I was coming around giving competitive exams and, having to appear for group discussions and, give interviews, I said, I want to increase my knowledge. I want to come across as a credible, intelligent, young individual. And that identity shift, becoming an intelligent, credible individual, made me change this habit of going and picking up newspapers, competitive magazines, Reader Digest. And that was my system and process to achieve the outcome of being a reader.
Beautiful.
Right? So the identity needed to change. Okay. Now, I think the author also gives a wonderful example in this. It's like someone who's wanting to quit smoking, right? You typically go to a party and somebody offers you a cigarette and you can say one thing. You can say, I am trying not to smoke, right? And that is your process or goal, which you're expressing. And the second thing you can say is, I am not a smoker these days.
That's an identity.
That's the identity. So you've changed your identity. You were a smoker. You're not a smoker today. You're not a smoker in this moment. You're not a smoker this week. So you're shifting the identity at the base, and then everything can stack up on top of that.
So as you're explaining, it comes out very clearly that that's the core, isn't it?
That is the core. Absolutely. Your systems and processes will become sharper and stronger only if you identify with the person you want to be.
Beautiful. So I'm going to ask you something here, Sanand. This is not planned in my thought process. For a moment, let's move from this world of coaching, and I'm going to ask you to explain this to young leaders who are on their aspirational journey to become something they want to. How do they see these three things? Should they start moving from working on what they want to become, which is the result, and then start focusing on systems and come down and look at identity? How should they interpret this? Because they don't know what is their identity 15 years later. They have their identity currently. Aaj मैं एक assistant manager हूँ, आज मैं एक manager हूँ. That I know. But how do I start working on the identity now?
So basically, the goal needs to be in place, right? And say 5 years from now, they aspire to be a leader.
Okay.
Yeah. So their identity today needs to begin to change from the sense of being an assistant manager to becoming a growing leader.
Okay.
Or to becoming a high potential individual who will be identified for future leadership goals, right? So that identity needs to start changing and saying, who do I want to be? And have I started behaving like that?
Okay.
Right? So it's literally saying, okay, I want to be a top leader 5 years from now, but I want to be a senior manager, senior leader 5 years from now. How do I identify with it? And how do I change the way I come across, the way I behave, the way I take my learning, the way I engage with my colleagues, the way I look at an intern who comes to work alongside me?
Correct.
And that identity now needs to start shifting by saying that, okay, I'm just an assistant manager and this is my role, to saying, no, I'm a growing leader.
That's a huge mind shift.
And that identification needs to change.
So that will propel the person to start working on and putting systems in place.
That propels the person, absolutely. Even in my personal experience, even before I read this book, I realized that I have done this at several times, right? From a time where almost 30 years ago, I considered myself to be a lazy person. That was the identity I had, was that I'm a lazy person. I don't enjoy working out and I don't like workouts. To my current identity, where I almost consider myself an athlete. This I have done purposely.
Okay.
And I have realized how that shift in identity has helped me do the stuff that needed to be done on the top.
True.
And similarly, in my coaching journey, from being an L&D professional who worked in organizations to setting up my own coaching practice, I needed to change my identity at the base. From being a service provider, I needed to tell myself I've become an entrepreneur.
Right.
The minute that identity changed, the other things on top start changing.
Lovely.
So there are multiple ways of looking at this.
Beautiful.
So you basically look at where you want to be and say, how can I authentically use some part of that in my today's language or in my today's thought or in my today's words?
There's a little bit of reverse engineering also there, right?
Yes.
Because I want to be there and then I work backwards towards
reaching
that.
Yes. It also helps your decision making, right? So, for example, when you're doing something and an assistant manager is wanting to take a decision, and one way to check is, what would a senior leader do in this situation?
Correct.
Right? And be able to take that decision based on what he or she sees herself or himself 5 years from now.
Yeah, you're right in saying this, Sana, because once you start doing that, your bosses or the system around will start looking at, there is a change in the way this person takes accountability probably from a level that seniors take.
Yeah.
Visibility, when it happens, then you are identified as a potential leader or a growing leader in the organization, right?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Because I've changed my identity and I want to be a high potential, right? So I started
Mm.
already. I behave like a high potential.
Mm.
And I take decisions, and I create my own visibility as to how a high potential would do it.
Yeah, yeah. Super. That's very, very nice. Uh, as 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 I start visualizing what I want to be and I start working on putting systems, he also talks about a very powerful method. And what I like in this book, as you also said, is there's a very clear method that can help us to come out of the madness that we are in, right? Because somewhere there's so many habits I want to change. I want to be a non-smoker. I want to be an accountable person. I want to be better in managing time. इतना कुछ कैसे हो पाएगा? And I'm baffling. Is it a sequential effort or are these parallel efforts from my side? So a lot of things running in the head. So in this kind of a situation that I am, or the young leaders are, how does this habit stacking as a formula really help leaders?
So number one, Rajiv, at least when I'm coaching people, right? One, we need to find out what is your priority, right? Because we may want to do multiple things, but we can't engage in everything parallelly.
True.
We need to look at things on a priority level and say which is most important to me, at least for this month, from the starting point of view. And then pay attention to that. And then I'll tell you what habit stacking is. Habit stacking is basically, it comes from a sense of human behavior. For example, when we go and buy an electronic device, right? We buy a big, expensive electronic device. The next thing that encourages our purchasing is to buy accessories related to that, right? You buy a great set of clothes. The next purchase that you might look out for is a good pair of shoes to go with it.
True.
So as human beings, we are wired to do this. What James Clear speaks about in the Atomic Habits is to be able to see what are some of my current habits, right? Which are already working for me.
Right.
For example, one habit is to brush my teeth in the morning. It's a well-established habit. Now, something that I want to introduce, I can do it straight after this. So the minute I put my brush back, a new habit that I may want to start is to do a couple of deep breaths while looking in the mirror and looking at myself. You know, so that is what is habit stacking is called.
Right.
So I do that, then I go and I drink a cup of tea. As soon as I put my mug down, I sit down with a paper and pen and plan what my day looks like. Right? So tea drinking is a part of a well-established habit. And along with that, you're stacking a new habit, which means you plan your day well before you start anything else. Before, say, you pick up your phone, etc., but you're doing it consciously. So you've literally made a list of habits that are well established and that are working well for you and that you don't need to change. And along with each habit, you stack a new habit that you want to introduce. Whether it's meditation, whether it's journaling, whether it's communicating, whatever it is.
Now you gave the example of making a note of things to do for the day, right? I would have anyway done that. By stacking it after the coffee, how does it help me?
So for example, if it is already a well-established habit for you, then maybe that doesn't need to come for you, right? It could be something else for someone else. It's a new habit that you're trying to introduce that you stack with an old habit. That's how this process works.
Right. So as you're speaking, I'm thinking that it kind of tells my mind that ye ho gaya, next I do this, next I do this. So it kind of pushes me to do the next one without an avoidance syndrome there.
Absolutely. Bilkul. So for example, it says habit stacking is a method of doing things where you are so used to doing one thing that by the time you end it, you know exactly what you need to do next. And there's no gap to take you away from that.
That's the powerful one that you said. Yes. Your mind is already making the shift to the next one. Acha, mujhe ye karna hai next. Lovely. It also kind of gives me a lot of confidence that because I keep stacking one over the other and I keep moving to new habits, it makes me more confident, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And every day that you do it, then it'll become a pattern for you. That, I brush my teeth, I do my meditation, I have my cup of tea, I plan my day, right? I put down my pen, I go and get into my workout gear, I go for a jog, I come back, I interact with my family, you know, or I open my laptop, I think about my day and I see what are the critical items. I open my laptop. I'm very short till 10:30, 11. I don't check into my social media. And I check into my social media only after I've had my cup of tea at 11 or with my cup of tea at 11.
Sana, that's a powerful point. That's a powerful point you said.
Yeah.
So I'm actually holding on to that habit of checking the social media after the cup of tea. Matlab, 11:30 tak, I don't allow it to enter my earliest phase.
Yeah. And this works because I've tried it and this is what I'm doing. Because, you know, there was a time where like everybody else, I would get up in the morning and pick up my phone. You know, it had become such a part of our lives. But now because of habit stacking, I'm very clear that I will not get into social media till 10 a.m. in the morning. And that means after my breakfast is done, after my work has been set, when I reach out to my first cup of coffee, that is the time I can check my social media. And then you put it down again. And the next time you can pick up social media is only after you finish lunch. So that's another 10, 15 minutes at that time. So you make time slots for that and don't let it interfere with your life constantly.
Yeah. When you said this, I was actually visualizing you do that. What it tells me, Sana, is it kind of removes the clutter also in the day, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Lovely. That's a nice one. I think young leaders is a very powerful one because they've got so much to do and they're just going helter-skelter doing multiple things.
Yeah.
It's a powerful book for them to read because this habit stacking formula alone could be a great learning for them to
it is a game changer.
Clutter out their life. Yes, it's a game changer. Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you the next one, which is very interesting and attractive for me. He speaks about this very powerful concept, and honestly, I never thought it in this way till I read the book. The temptation bundling concept. So what is temptation bundling and why should leaders start doing this is the first part of the question. The second part of the question is any one example that you can give from your life where you used it and it helped you.
So it's basically about making a habit look attractive, you know, and habit changing can happen when it looks attractive to you. So even from a young leader's perspective, you must know why do you want to become a leader 5 years from now? What's attractive about it? And, you know, to have that internal conversation or even a conversation with the coach to say, why? So like Simon Sinek says, get the why out first, right? And make it really look attractive for yourself. And then get to it. So I'll give you an example like you asked me. At the risk of giving away my age, at 42, you know, I remember I was going for a walk and a phrase came into my head. And the phrase was 42 at 42, right? I had just started writing articles and I said, this would make such a catchy line, 42 at 42. What did it mean? Is that at the age of 42, doing a full marathon, right? Yeah, so doing 42 kilometers at the age of 42.
Wow.
So that looked very attractive. And I said, wow, that sounds so cool, you know, and just that ego of mine felt so happy, you know, just dreaming about that stage. Imagine if I can do this and imagine if I can write about it and imagine if I can boast about it on an interview, you know, so like it's coming true right now. But having made or having thought of that attractive thought made a person like me who at that time could barely run 2 minutes at a stretch on the treadmill, right? So my journey from 2 minutes up the treadmill to 42 kilometers and doing a marathon, I actually did 43.1 because I was a part of a 100-kilometer marathon. That journey happened because of this one tagline.
Attractive.
And that seemed attractive to me. And I put in all the work behind it, right? So, yeah, so it was just that. And I was like, before I turn 43, let me see if I can get this done. And I got it done.
Amazing.
So that's the backward journey of making something look attractive. That gave me the habit of increasing my stamina, working out regularly, building my muscle strength. It did so much good for me.
Yeah.
Just because it was attractive.
True, true. No, forget about the fact that you did 43 point whatever. The fact, which is more important, is it made you a healthier human being that you are. You'll be far more healthier when you are 60, 65 than many other who would reach 65, 70, isn't it? So the number of 43 is
Absolutely.
just happen.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a good certificate to show on the wall, but you are far more healthier.
Sure, sure.
Lovely, lovely. I think it's a very powerful message. Thanks for this, Sana, for young leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. See, because that event happened, it's over, right? That's already 2 years old.
Correct.
But the habits that I developed then, I'm still pursuing them.
Yeah, look at that.
I still run. I still do my walks. I still do my muscle strength training. I still go for treks. All of that.
True.
And this will never leave me now.
It's become the second skin that you spoke about. Absolutely. Beautiful. Lovely.
Rajiv, I'm
Yes.
not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now? There seems to be a bit of a time lag in my voice reaching you. Is it clear now?
I can hear you now. Yes.
I think there was a little bit of time lag. Okay, India and Singapore are time lag again. All right. Let's talk about the other side of the habit. We spoke about good habits, spoke about habit stacking. Let's talk about the bad habit. Breaking a bad habit is also equally important, isn't it?
Yes.
Tell me your experience of this effort. And how
Personally?
difficult is it to break a bad habit is the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is any one significant advice that you can give that can help young leaders to break that habit?
Yeah. I think one part of, like they said, make a good habit look attractive. You have to make a bad habit look unattractive.
How simple it was.
Right? And that's really what it is. But I'm sure, having said that, breaking a bad habit is difficult, right? And when I'm working with someone personally, I understand how tough it is. For example, an identity that I struggle with at the base level is, I say I have a sweet tooth, and I love desserts. I love my meetha. It is a habit that I want to break. And I have broken it several times. Like I told you, I did it for 100 days and then got quickly back to it. Not that I wanted to give it up, but I want to reduce it.
Right.
Now it's about, when I read about sugar as a subject, I realize how bad it is for the system. It was something that was not meant for human consumption. Fruit was the only way we were supposed to get sugar, right? All the processed sugar that we have post that is something that's really bad. One thing that really caught my attention, and that's how I tried to make that habit look unattractive, was sugar is one big reason that cancer grows in our body, right? Because cancer cells actually feed on that sugar. Okay. When I read that, I almost understood that having sugar on a regular basis is actually poisoning your body slowly and steadily. Right. As much as it's great for the tongue, it's not good for the body. Right. And that's the bad part of sugar. Till date, I can't say that I'm completely rid of it, but consciously and mindfully, I've been able to reduce it extremely. So now my sugar eating habits are either on the weekend or maybe once or twice in a week, but not on a daily basis, which is something that I can easily and happily do. Yeah. So that is definitely a habit that needed to be broken. And yes, I'm working on it. It's not completely gone, but I'm very, very mindful about it. And I try the different things that I help. Also, for example, like I said, getting an accountability partner. Once in a while, I tie up with a friend and we go off sugar completely for 3 weeks, 1 month. Right? So there are different methods of doing it.
True.
but I will never give up on it. Right? That's very, very important for me. And that's not going to change. And there is another part of this book, which is extremely critical, is that look at making a 1% change.
Okay.
Right? And that is what an atomic habit is.
Correct.
They say a 1% change or progress or incremental progress done over a year is 37% better than where you started out.
Okay.
So it's really about that little. So it doesn't mean you have to give up. For example, me, I don't have to give up sugar. But for example, if I was taking 1 teaspoon of sugar in my tea or coffee, can I reduce it to half? Can I replace it with honey? Can I replace it with jaggery? Can I look at a more healthy way? So that is my 1% progress today.
Right.
So to be able to look at every day and say, what is my 1% progress this week or today? And then head only in that direction. So that mini step, but to consistently make those little progresses.
Yeah, which also ties back to the first question that we had, saying that small habits make a huge difference.
Yeah,
Started the conversation from there.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I like this thought that you gave us, Sana, that it's not about leaving it. It's also equally important to find suitable alternatives.
Yes.
If you have one, which is also interesting, right?
Yeah.
Lovely. Honey is definitely a far better alternative to sugar.
Yeah.
And probably you may be on a honey mode for 2-3 weeks and completely go off honey also for 2-3 weeks. So multiple methods and systems again you spoke about.
Yes. So you can look at different ways of breaking a bad habit. It doesn't have to be only one way. And you should keep, I think every human being is so different and so unique.
Yeah.
You need to actually test different things on yourself and say, does this work for me? No. Does this work for me? No. Does this work for me? So I'll give you a very simple example. I used to have a large cup of tea. That meant I needed 1 teaspoon of sugar. Now, when I started putting half a teaspoon of sugar in that, the tea didn't taste as good. So I was like, what should I do? So what I did was I reduced the quantity of the tea.
How lovely.
Right? So I could put half a teaspoon. I could have lesser tea, but it tasted as good. So it's just how much attention are you paying to wanting to change that habit?
Oh, I love what you said, Sana. How much attention you want to pay. That is the most important.
Yeah.
Lovely. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. That takes me to the last but one question. He also says it's equally important and needed for people to review your good habits.
Yes.
Tell us a little about this. If somebody doesn't do it, it could create a downside, is what the author says.
Yes.
Explain this to the young leaders.
Okay. So, for example, in the book, it says that when you get so used to doing something and you're doing it constantly, sometimes you can become complacent and the chances of error increase.
Okay.
Yeah. This is what the author says. But when I read it, I just needed to look at my own life and say, which is a good habit that is dysfunctional sometimes for me? And what is something that I do almost on an auto mode, which is not working well? And I realized that I have a wonderful good habit of being an early sleeper, right? I sleep very early, 9:30, 10, 10:30 max, right? I'm out. This is a great habit to have. It serves me very well. As a working person, as a disciplined, sincere person, it works very, very well for me. As an early riser, it works very well for me. Where does it become dysfunctional? It becomes dysfunctional for me as a social person, right? And that is when a good habit like early sleeping needs to be reviewed by me personally, where I need to look at this pattern that I've created or this habit that I've created for myself to say, it's okay. And to tell my body, it's okay. In 365 days, if 65 days you stretched yourself and you went to a 12:31, you wouldn't die and the world wouldn't change.
True.
So that's when I realized that, yes, even I have a good habit that can be dysfunctional and needs a review and needs a looking at from time to time. Because as a social person, that doesn't work well for me.
Right. So you can give your allowance of not sleeping early on a Saturday or a Sunday. That's okay.
Yeah, Absolutely. And not become a stickler and say that I have an identity of an early sleeper, you know. So that's an identity that I need to hold back on a social occasion, on somebody's special day where it's all about celebration and they want me to be around, to say that it's okay. No, today I'm a party person.
Lovely, lovely.
And I can stay.
This is so nice, Sana. Thanks for bringing this. It only helps me more because those days where I get up at 5 a.m. and I'm a little lazy to hit the gym, or there is work and I'm working, there is also a parallel guilt that runs in the head. And it happened for some time till I spoke to a friend of mine and he said, don't allow that guilt to run because you are getting at 5. Kabhi kabhi kaam aa jata hai. You have a session tomorrow, you have to prepare, you have a session for the day, you're preparing. It's okay.
Yeah.
It took some time to tell myself, Rajiv, don't go through that parallel guilt trip. Chalta hai.
It's okay. Absolutely.
You're also
and you can find time for that habit, right? During the day, you can do, instead of a 1 hour gym workout, you can walk for 20 minutes in the house between your calls or between anything. And you can get that in, you know, the lost sleep that I may have, I can get it during the day and I can sleep for about half an hour, 40 minutes the next day post lunch and catch up. And not make it a thing about saying that, no, this is a good habit that I have and there's no reviewing this and there's no changing this ever.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That was a lovely, lovely conversation, Sana. I'm going to end this conversation with the last question. With all that experience of having coached so many people, 2 razor sharp advices to the young leaders.
So since we're talking about habits, I think I will stick with that in terms of what I think every young leader should do is every young leader should look at their identity. I think that's really important and know very, very clearly in their mind, what does the next version of them look like?
Right.
And be very clear about that in their head. And the second thing is consistently keep working towards it. Just stay at it.
Yeah.
Even if no results are showing, just stay at it. Don't give up. So I think that is what I really want to, you know, convey to everybody. And we all know the example of the bamboo plant, but I'll bring it up again, where a bamboo for the first 4 years of its life doesn't even show a shoot, right? Because it's just building its internal root network. And within 6 weeks, in the 5th year, it grows up to 90 feet. Yeah? So that is the whole system of just putting in the work that needs to be put in and waiting for the results to come. Eventually they will. So whether it's weight loss, whether it's becoming a very smart, well-known, well-educated, knowledgeable leader, or whether it is changing any bad habit that you have, just stay at it.
Right. Thank you so much. That was very, very powerful. And thanks for ending with the bamboo shoot example. I think the young minds would understand what you're saying. With that, I close this session. Thank you for coming on this conversation and talking on this. I thoroughly enjoyed this chat. I hope you had a good time, Sana.
Absolutely, Rajiv. Thank you so much for allowing me to express myself.
Absolutely. Anytime. Bye-bye. You take care. See you soon.